like South Central being Texas, there's a lot of high schools, a lot of high school football, right?
Yeah,
And their video,
market.
right?
Yeah.
Their video boards are not getting any smaller. They're only getting larger and larger, and the amount of stuff that's going into football stadiums in Texas, and really a lot of places, but Texas for sure, it's pretty staggering.
Hello and welcome to the Daktronics Experience Podcast. I'm Justin Oxner here with Matt Anderson. Today we're joined by Michael Cruz. Michael, can we get a quick introduction of yourself, kind of what you do at Daktronics and how you got to that position?
Sure. Well, I am an applications engineer for the South Central region, and I think the best description of what we do as an app engineer, as our group does, is just we make things work. We figure out how to make things work. I mean, there's probably a million elevator pitches for it, but really, somebody comes to us with a challenge, something they want to do, a problem, and we figure out how to make it work. Technique or technology is it's probably the best way to sum that up. But I got here. I started in production, so I went to TCU and did sports broadcasting. There's my major, and so I was producing football games like right when I stepped on campus, so that was cool. We were involved with the production right off the bat. It was the difference going there versus a larger school where I might have spent more time in actual theory and classes versus a brand new program that was starting out. We got to jump right in, and the nice part about being in the Dallas-Fort Worth market was around a lot of people that worked for the Mavericks, worked for the Stars, worked for regional television. So all of us were really, more than anything else, soaking up all of those opportunities and saying, yes, we'll show up for a Stars game, and I'm not going to get paid, but I just want to be in the truck and learn, right? I just want people to know that I want to do this for a living. But then also video board shows. I was running Venus 7000 at the football stadium or for the Frisco Rough Riders. I have a much lower employee number with Daktronics than you would think I do, because my first gig with Daktronics was sometime, I think it was in 2002, where I was hired by Keyframe to do like an event support or to run Venus 7000 at the American Airlines Center.
Okay.
So at the time, there weren't like temp employees apparently. So I got hired by Daktronics, and then fired by Daktronics. And then 10 years later, when I actually came on full time, they couldn't rectify when my start date because it was technically in 2001. So it's sort of a weird way to get started with Daktronics.
On good terms.
There you go. We were on great terms. Just timing didn't work out. So I was doing a little bit of that operation. So I'd actually had a lot of familiarity with Daktronics before I even really started working full time in the business. Then after I graduated, I was just doing mostly freelance stuff, and then went on full time with FC Dallas in Major League Soccer for 5 years, from 2005 to 2010. And again, was producing the show, running show control Venus 7000. I guess it was just Venus 7000 at the time. And then was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time when in 2011, Daktronics put in a brand new video board system at the Texas Rangers at the old ballpark. And Chuck Morgan could no longer do everything by himself. The man, the myth, the legend had to say, okay, we need some help in here. And so it's again, right place at the right time. I took that job and was there for the 2011 season. So should have won the World Series that year, but I can still say that I have a championship ring of some sort. So my sports life is complete with that.
There you go.
AL champions in 2011, and then 2012, 2013 came around, and as much as I loved baseball and I loved the sports life, I kind of wanted to get to control my own schedule a little bit more than having to wait every year to see how much was I going to work this year? When am I, holidays, weekends, that's what you do in sports is work those times. And so it was just, it was time for me to find something a little bit different that kept me close to sports, and really the applications engineer position ended up opening up right about that time at the end of the 2013 season, and it worked out. I knew everybody that I was working with already, so it was a real easy transition into working for Daktronics.
I was going to say, in all the baseball games, I mean, it's nonetheless you were involved in sports and all those different holidays, but there's so many baseball games.
You've got 81 games, and then you've got spring training. If you're good, you're going to the playoffs, so you're stretching into October, September, October. Or if you're not, you're just waiting to get the season over with, right? But then right away, February, you're looking at spring training, you're looking at prep for the next season. And oh, by the way, we just happen to be in Texas where the weather is fairly mild in the winter and we have a pretty good venue. So why are we not hosting events at the ballpark, right? It's like all the different things that just you can do. And it was great. It was revenue generating and everything you want for the company. But our schedules were like, man, this is pretty brutal. So I just wanted to step back a little bit from that. And I do miss the production aspect of I miss being in charge of a show, but also I don't mind not having to work every day. So that's I'm happy with the compromise that I made.
There you go. I was going to say, because it's from TCU up through all that, like what aspect of, I don't know, are you always a sports fan growing up? Kind of like what kind of made you kind of fall in love with that career path and obviously stick with it?
Yeah, well, I started out actually wanting to be a meteorologist, if you can believe that. But I barely got through Calculus 2. And then they said, you can register for Calculus 3. And I said, I think a liberal art is going to be much better. So I immediately went to radio, TV, film at community college in San Antonio, which is where I grew up. And just sort of figured out, was it photography? Was it radio? Was it, video? What did I want to do? And eventually I just figured out that I actually liked audio production the best. But when I started figuring out where I was going to go after community college, I really just looked at, well, how could I like the sports side of things. How can I be in that world? And it was between, the A&Ms and the UTs and a lot of the bigger schools, but also looking at how can I get my hands on stuff right away versus going to a school with a giant enrollment and, we'll all be fighting for positions and to get the work.
More classroom type
exactly.
stuff like you were
Classroom
saying.
or just more people that you got to wait in line for. TCU had just started their sports broadcasting program. They had just bought a production truck and we were going to be the first, whoever was in that class the first year was going to be the first students doing this program. And so I knew we were going to be working on football games and all other sports that fall and dove right into it. And so that made the most sense. And it, like I said, also being in the DFW market, there's so many sports.
Yeah.
You've got Mavericks, you've got Stars, Rangers, minor league teams, everything, colleges, anything you want to work, you've got plenty of it there. So even after graduation, like I said, I was able to stick around there and really, I had my pick of places that I could go and find opportunities, whether it was internships or eventually, freelancing and working full time. It worked out really well that I, grew up watching sports, so I knew sports, and it married that love of sports with the love of production, and all came together.
Yeah, and that led you to Daktronics in 2013, you said?
Yes, in November of 2013.
Second time, right?
Yes, the second time. Correct. My rehire date.
And then you kind of stayed in the sports side of things. Have you been in that sports same role kind of since 2013?
Yeah, I've done the application engineering role for South Central since then. I should say I did originally want to be the event producer for MetLife Stadium. That was actually that was actually the first job I applied for, but unfortunately, they needed somebody in the summer of 2013, and I wasn't interested in leaving the Rangers in the middle of the season, and I don't think Daktronics was interested in hiring me away from the Rangers at that point either. So
burning the bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that didn't really work out, unfortunately. I think I would have enjoyed that too, but again, the application engineer position came open that fall, and so the timing ended up working out really, really well. And yeah, it's like I said, I've been able to stay close to that sports world. I still am involved in helping produce shows and maintain control or maintain contact with producers and a lot of people that I knew at the time when I was in the business, when I was on the customer side. So a lot of those relationships have stayed there, and it's just been nice. Like I said, I don't have to be there for every game, but I can be there for games. If they need us or if there's a way that I can help. So yeah, it's been a really nice balance. What I've been able to find with this particular role at Daktronics.
And it's you being in the South Central, then application engineer. Is sports your main focus, or kind of what other markets? So there's like major league, minor league, colleges. Kind of what is your?
Yeah, we're the live event side of things.
Yeah.
So every level. And people know, like South Central being Texas, there's a lot of high schools, a lot of high school football, right?
Yeah,
and their their video boards are not getting any smaller. They're only getting larger and larger, and the amount of stuff that's going into football stadiums in Texas, and really a lot of places, but Texas for sure, it's pretty staggering. And these are giant consultant bids now for a high school football stadium. So there's a lot of involvement in that market as well. So yes, you run the gamut. Well, actually, the interesting part is I don't have that many major league or professional teams. I'm a lot of colleges, whether it's Big 12 or SEC, like large university installs where we've got many venues on campus. So that's what keeps me busy a lot of time, is working with the University of Texas and Texas Tech, Baylor's, Oklahoma, LSU, just a lot of universities that we've been fortunate to get multiple venues at the university. So all year long we're working with these schools, and so definitely keeps us busy.
Yeah, and you're working on a lot of things behind the scenes to make sure all those displays are running and all those events are going smoothly, which kind of brings us to you're in Brookings this week. Can you tell us, kind of why you're back?
Why would you do that?
Brookings,
I mean, as much as we want everyone to think you came back here just to be on the podcast, but you had another reason.
Well, I did want to be on the podcast, so that's fair.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're all here for the applications engineers are up for what we like to do as regularly as possible is have our get-togethers where we basically sit in a room and complain about stuff for a week. So it's great. But we all like to complain about the same thing. So it's fantastic. There's a unity in that. But no, we get to get together and talk about a lot of the things that we're all seeing out in the field, and get to talk with people we don't get to see in person every day, our product managers and people that deal with show control and our data interfaces, and just actually get to sit face to face and talk about challenges and talk about things that we're seeing in the future and what our customers are talking to us about in the field. Because Zoom calls are great and all, but there's something different about sitting in a room with people and actually being able to, look somebody in the eye and shake their hand and just have that in-person communication. It just makes it all feel a lot more real. So it's a great week for us up here, and I'm happy to see everybody, because we don't always get to do it every year. We were obviously the COVID break. We didn't see each other for a long time.
Pause on things.
Exactly. So I think I don't actually think we got together last year. I think it was 2 years ago the last time we were up here. But it's just, again, since we don't get to see each other, right? I always laugh because every 2 years I go someplace and I have a badge and it actually gets me into a building. I'm like, oh wow, I do work somewhere, right? Rather than just the room across the hall from my bedroom. Right?
Or sites and stadiums.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, and that's fun too, but it also is nice to know I've got a home somewhere that other people actually come and work at and stuff. So yeah, it is nice to get back to Brookings and see folks and have those conversations in person. Because even, like I said, even amongst the app engineer group, we talk every day, but there's something different about actually sitting in a room and being together.
And social interactions, right? Like if you guys all go out to dinner or something too. I mean, they tried doing virtual happy hours for a while, I think.
That only works so much. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So you were excited to use the badge that actually opened a door, right?
Yeah.
How often do you actually kind of get back to corporate to see what's going on here and to kind of network again, even tighter face to face? Is that once every 2 years, or is it whenever that allows?
I think it's a little bit of when time allows. It's a little bit of, honestly, when budget allows, right? There are a lot of considerations for getting people back to Brookings, but I think as many times as we're offered the opportunity, most of us do try to get back here. Because again, it's just see, feel, touch, interact with people, look at products, actually, look at the showroom, all kinds of stuff in demo and on the manufacturing line, and just all the things that, again, even if it's just a nice reminder that there is a place that, this is a corporate headquarters of the place that I work at, and I don't get to see it that often. Do a fair amount of traveling in the region. So yes, I get to see, sites and customers and stuff like that. But it is nice to see coworkers and, again, be in the building and just remember, be up here. And the nice part too is that we tend to come usually closer to the summer now versus when we used to come in January and February all the time, where it's like, well, maybe I don't want to come back all the time. So yeah, it is nice to be back for sure.
You got greeted with a tornado siren when you came in.
Yeah, that was unexpected on Monday. Not the welcome I was looking for, but it's like, I thought I left Texas. I didn't know this happened up here.
Yeah, and I know you still have a couple days left here before you go back home, but has there been anything so far in this trip that you've seen that was either new or interesting that you wanted to point out?
Yeah, I think, we actually, even just this morning, the group got our hands on, the new All Sport Pro hardware. And again, it's the same kind of thing where things are talked about a lot. Stuff is, discussed in calls, or we see a PowerPoint presentation on something.
Podcast,
Right. Or a podcast. Exactly. Right.
Yep.
But I mean, the microphone's real. But you actually see it in person, right? You get to hold this box and you go, okay, this is actually a thing. Like we can talk about this now. We know what it looks like. There's maybe a more comfort factor that that this is real. Like if you're going to sell this product, you actually know what it is. You understand how it functions, right? So that was one of the nice things, and just a lot of what we're talking about this week deals with how we're looking at show control and data interfaces and things in the future. So there may not be a ton that we're going to see here today or this week in person, but again, having those real focused conversations that we can have with our product managers and with people that are responsible for these things, it's just that it's so valuable, and we don't always get to focus on those kind of things. Again, user groups and weekly meetings are fine, but there's just something more real about those conversations happening in person, that it just feels significant when you get to do it.
There's that deeper understanding, that intimate knowledge that you're gaining here too. So that's
absolutely
awesome to hear. And I know you mentioned a few projects that you're kind of working in your region. Is there anything that you kind of worked on recently, maybe in the past year, that's kind of new or exciting for you?
We have done a fair bit of competitor control system replacements, like worked with LSU last year to replace a non-DAC control system with show control. And LSU, you look at the business and it feels it's often very cyclical. Like we want to have every single site in the country, and we want everybody to be a Daktronics customer, but some projects you win, some projects you lose for whatever reason, multitude of reasons that you can win and lose. But when I first started, we had every venue on campus at LSU, and then a couple years in,
not so
tides
much.
changed, and we lost almost every venue on campus. And now, last year, there's some new people there. We get a chance to talk to them, and we talk about show control. They're looking to upgrade their existing control system and are exploring options. And we just have a chance to reopen some doors. A lot of the people that I used to know at LSU are no longer there. New people. So had a great opportunity to work with them and to get show control at a bunch of venues. And this year we're installing football now, and all of a sudden, well, here comes this relationship back again, right? We get to do it all over, and it feels like a brand new, fresh start. So those are exciting things when we have success with show control. And it isn't just, it fits a need for the customer and it feels really good to be able to fill that need for them, right? We're the right product for them at the right time. And that's, again, same kind of thing. We're not always going to win, but it does, you kind of take it personally a little bit sometimes when you lose a project, because you feel like, what did we do wrong? What did we how did we not? I believe in the product, so why did they not? But by the same time, it's like I said, I know that there are some places that they have their thing and they're going to stick with it. And it's like, I'd be doing myself and them a disservice if I'm just constantly knocking on their door and saying, hey, show control. But for the places that are looking and are interested and are receptive to it and go, this really does fit for us. It's the right product. That feels good to be able to do that for people. So we've had some wins like that recently, and it just, those are the ones that feel really nice and significant for sure.
This kind of ties into maybe also with your role. I mean, I can't remember the phrase we said before, this joking around that you pretty much do everything. Or
you make everything work. You make anything work, right? You just make it work. Yep.
But it's definitely heavier on the control system integration side. I know maybe it's speaking to that a little bit, because when you get brought in on a project, I mean, I imagine pre-sale and post-sale you're involved, but a lot of that is in the control room with the control racks, the hardware and the software, right? Not so much with the actual physical display structures and any of that kind of stuff.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of times, another way that we're looked at is that we are the voice of the customer in those conversations, or the voice of the user, I should say, in those conversations, right? Because a lot of times when you have a bid or a project or something that's going to cost a lot of money, the people that are using the system don't always get to be involved in those conversations, which is a shame, because you would think that that's like a pretty important person to have in the room,
run it, right?
But it's not always the case for many reasons. So because we are the people that tend to be in the trenches with those folks, right? We know a lot of us have experience in the business. A lot of us have done this job before, or we're the people that are out in the field. We're talking to the customers. We understand their pain points, what they like, what they don't, all those things. We get to be the people in the room with the decision makers that can help steer or help bring their concerns to the forefront. If it's a pre-sale conversation, I can look at what we're providing and say, I think we should tweak this system a little bit because I know that there are things that they want to do that maybe weren't on a spec or weren't necessarily said on some piece of paper somewhere, but I know talking to them that this is what they want to do, or we've seen this from other NCAA sites or other comparable customers, and I just think that this is a good idea. We should be doing these things because it's going to benefit them in the future. It's going to have less painful for us in the future. When, we forgot or we didn't supply something, right? You don't want to have that conversation. Like, you want to just be able to say, yes, we can do it, right? And that's so then really the conversation post-sale becomes, well, how do we do it? Right? These are the tools that we have at our disposal. How do we make this?
And what do we do with it?
Right. What do we do with it? Right. Exactly. Do we accomplish this? Like I said, the technique or the phrase that old friend Mark Eisenstadt used to say.
The old friend.
Old friend. He's still around, though. I know. He's on the podcast. But is technology or technique is usually the way you look at it. So, like, do you actually need something more? Do we need software? Do we need hardware? Or do we just need to look at how you're doing something, right? Do we have the pieces that we need and we just have to look at reconfiguring something or changing something over here so we can enable this device to talk to that device, right? So it's a lot of those behind the scenes, like, the networking and a lot of conversations that people are just, I don't want any part of that. Can you deal with that conversation? It's like, yeah, sure. That's my job, is to deal with those conversations, right? To be the bridge between, maybe a non-technical person and the control room staff, or the IT person and the control room staff, right? Because there's just so many different layers that we touch now that, especially on the networking side, it's not just video signals anymore. I mean, video signals are network now.
Yes.
So it's just all these conversations that a lot of people sometimes aren't comfortable having, that I have to be comfortable having. I have to know at least enough to be dangerous to have those conversations with people to really get us to where we can accomplish what it is that the customer is trying to achieve. So there's a lot of that technical background stuff that's you have to stay on top of. But I love being in the middle of all. I like breaking stuff and then fixing stuff and then breaking it again. So I'm right at home in that place.
It's like you're on the back end connecting the dots, even like you said, between what the customer wants and what's actually needed to make sure it happens, whether that's reorganizing the technology or adding the technology and doing it the right way to make it happen. It's like the customer says, I want this to happen. And you say, okay, we're going to need this and this and time together the correct way.
Exactly.
It's not as simple as, okay, we plug the TV in, here's the remote. It's, okay, we need to make sure everything that's inside that works and the control on that back end works.
Or it can even be sometimes that the customer thinks it's, I just plug in this thing and here's the remote, right? But based on how they're asking the question or based on the experiences that I have with what they're asking, I know what it really means. Right? So I can help them understand, well, this is, when you ask for this is what it actually means to your overall. So maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we need to rethink about what it is that you're trying to accomplish and, look at it from this perspective, and might we, if we just did something a little bit different, maybe you don't need this hardware or whatever it might be, right? It's all that, just putting the pieces together and having those conversations where you're just working through what is the end goal? What do you really want to achieve? And what's the best way we can do that, right? Because if something might cost money and you don't have that money today, well, is there something we can do in the interim and eventually get there, right? So it's figuring out, like I said, just make stuff work, right? It's figuring out the nuts and bolts with what they've got. How do we make it do what they want it to do?
Sure. Yeah, I like that technique versus technology too type of thing, because I think we've heard that sometimes even with show control, is that customers sometimes didn't know they could do this with it. Do you find, this is almost kind of putting you on the spot, but is there like a couple of ones that always seem to come up that when you meet with customers, they didn't realize that show control could do this, or Daktronics control systems could do something, and they're like, oh, I had no idea? Or
I don't think it's that there's any
standouts on
one particular I think all that happens is you'll get into places where, like, universities, I think, are actually a great case in point. You'll get into a spot where when the display was installed or the control system was installed 5 years ago, the people that were there got trained. And then those people are students or people, and they move on to other places, other jobs.
Yep.
And so some of that knowledge gets transferred, and it's just a game of telephone, right? What gets passed down, gets passed down. And then finally the person that's there in year 5, maybe nobody is around that set the system up, but this is the way that the system is built. So, okay, well, I guess I know that this button kind of does what I need it to do, so I'll copy that button and I'll just modify it to do what I need to do.
Okay.
Meanwhile, you come in with fresh eyes and you look at it and you go, well, why? You don't want to say it out loud. You're like, why in the heck are they doing it this way, right?
We've always done it this way.
Right, because you've all, right. That's probably I think that's the best way to put it is people will say, well, we've just always done it this way. Yeah. And it's not that they're deliberately not trying to learn. They just, here's another, right? Training. Sometimes it lines up that they've got a budget for training. Sometimes it doesn't. And they're just, I was a person that read the manual a lot, right? So I could get myself into trouble too, because I would just do whatever. Like this, well, the manual said I could do this, so why can't I do it, right? But it's not everybody is as crazy about those things as I am. Not everybody wants to read the manual. So yeah, you'll just end up in situations where, well, we just always done it this way. And so there's the technique part, right? You go, well, how about we break this down? Like, look at what this button is doing, right? How about if we could take 20 script lines and make it into tube just by doing a couple of different things? And you go, oh, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. But then part of it is, what if there's 1,000 buttons?
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay, now I got to find the time to change 1,000 buttons. Yes. So there's all of these things, right? And so I know sometimes I'm going to run into a site and they're not going to change 1,000 buttons. Yeah. But how do I at least steer them so that as they're building new things, they're not making the same mistakes? They're creating better habits as they move forward too.
Streamlining their process.
Exactly. So whatever it might be, right? But just better habits with or understanding, like you said, some of the new features that we have that didn't exist 5 years ago. Yeah. And helping those new users understand these are the things that you can do. So while they had to build this button this way 5 years ago, you don't have to do that anymore. It's
Shortcuts
way better.
Have been made, features added.
Exactly. These are all the things that you can do to make a difference now.
Nice. And I mean, thinking of that, is there anything that you're seeing out there that certain customers are asking for, or there's a new trend of, hey, we want to be able to do this new hot, flashy thing on the display?
Is it just next gen stats all over the place?
Yeah, it's a lot of data integration, right? It's on all levels, whether it's professional, whether it's college, whether it's minor league. It's just data. There's a lot of sources, a lot of new sources coming in, or a lot of updated sources that are out there that how do we take some of this old stuff where we didn't have nearly as much access to all of this all this data that we have now and take that and make it useful and do something with it in our show, right? Even a smaller, smaller university or a minor league team or however you might want to look at it, they want to put on a major league show. Yeah. So how do we do those and a lot of it's with data because, maybe somehow you could get some automation out of it, make your life a little bit easier or whatever the case may be, right? So it's just a lot of data type integrations or, more places have projection, ice projection, screen projection, whatever, right?
It's
or
like that 3D type.
Yeah, some other devices, lighting, stadium lights, other devices that they want to, or that they're now able to integrate into their show. So it's more about, well, how does show control become a hub for those devices, right? If we can communicate with everything that you need to communicate with, well, maybe you don't need your switcher to do all these things. Maybe show control can do it and you just trigger show control. Okay. And not only does it trigger your lights and your projectors, but it also triggers your open video on all your LED displays too. Right? So there's just a lot of, whether it's data integration or external device type integration, that's still, I feels like we talk about that all the time, but it just seems like it just keeps increasing in the amount of devices and things that are out there that people are playing with. If you notice, NHL or NBA playoffs are on right now, and a bunch of places have fans that have those bracelets that light up and blink in time with other stuff, right? That's just another thing that has to be triggered, right? So what does it look like? Is it time code coming from a piece of content, or is it a button press, or all those things are just, when these devices come in, people want to know, Can I sync them up? Can I integrate them with the
So you
show?
don't have to have 3 to 4
Exactly.
people all trying to
Right.
time in and hitting a button at
Exactly.
the exact same time.
Yep. So
now.
that, exactly. And because that was a thing, right?
Yeah.
But we can do so much of that integration now, and that's where it gets. Now we're talking to IT people about, well, this is on this network or this is on this network, but you're over here, and how do you connect those dots,
Yeah.
right? So that's all those technical type conversations that come from what seems like maybe a simple request. Can I trigger my lights? Well, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But how do we trigger your lights could be a million different ways to do
ways.
it. Yep.
And I'm thinking, it's not, I would say a trend necessarily, but you're mentioning more and more devices. And I know we're installing more and more displays outside of the bowl lately too. So as an app engineer, are you involved with that as well? Like when I'm saying out of the bowl too, I mean like concourse areas, clubs, suites, those types of things. Are you involved with those a lot too on the control side of those? Because I know sometimes it's just like third-party advertising or concession stand information, but sometimes there's triggered things that go on, or a live game feed is also being put on there. So how does your group kind of work with that?
The interesting part about it is that for a seemingly simple, it's just an L bar with scheduling or whatever. Those schedules, I've dealt with sponsor rotations in the past, so I know what that means. It's like, oh, well, here's your list of sponsors. Well, it's never that simple. It's here's a list of sponsors, but this sponsor has 3 different ads, and you need to make sure that those rotate into the rotation equally. And there's all these qualifications. Well, it's the fourth quarter, so this sponsor isn't part of the fourth quarter rotation, so you need to make sure they're only in this rotation. It's never that simple.
It's like a billboard type stuff.
Yeah, it looks simple, but it's never that simple.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like I may as well be selling this, right? Because you're trying to put this together and make it make sense is another art into itself, right? So now you've got marketing people who actually need to understand things like how do I create these schedules in Venus Control Suite? How do I do this? Because even then you've got producers in the control room that know, well, if our team wins the game, right after the game, we need this, Rangers win graphic to go into this rotation.
Yeah.
So now you've got 2 different parties that are dealing with these outside the bowl displays that both have to be able to work together. So even though the control room people might understand, I get how Venus works.
Yeah.
The marketing people or whoever might be responsible for that other content also need to know, because part of the benefit of the whole ecosystem is those control room people can give some of that responsibility to the marketing team.
Okay.
They don't want to have to schedule every single thing around the arena, right?
Sure.
But if those people don't understand how to, how everything plays together,
then it will fall
then
back
it
on
will
them.
fail, right? Or it will go back to them, say, well, this isn't working, you take it over, right? So I've dealt with as many marketing people over the past couple of years just talking about Venus Control Suite schedules as I have dealing with control room people talking about lighting triggers.
Sure.
It's becoming more and more of a topic, just because, like you said, there's a ton of there's marquees, there's whatever your Texas Live displays or whatever the case is, right? There's displays everywhere, and they want everything to be able to, at a moment's notice, sync up and play together. So there's a lot of those conversations that are happening for
A
sure.
lot of different languages you have to speak. You just mentioned now I'm talking to more IT people than I ever have, and now I'm talking to more marketing people. than I have.
Yep.
And then there's still everybody that you usually would speak to aside from all that too. So
You have to have that knowledge set or that ability to kind of just change your language at a moment's notice based on who you're talking to.
Meeting or you're talking to.
You got to be able to make it all work. It sounds
Absolutely.
complicated. Like you're talking venue-wide stuff, not just in the bowl, but outside the bowl, but also even outside, maybe in those entertainment districts that are connected to the stadium and maybe integrated with the system. How do you... you make it all work, right? That's your job. You make things work. How do you talk to the customer? Like you said, you speak different languages. Is there like advice you would give them if they're looking to do all of this, or is it advice for when they're bringing on each section of it to try and integrate that you would give?
I think the earlier that you can get in and have those conversations, if it's an app engineer or whoever it might be, because our group is intimately involved with helping all of these parties work together. As soon as I know we've got a project that's happening, I want to have those conversations.
Yeah.
It's just easier in the long run to say, let's set up this system the right way. If IT needs us to be on a specific network to do the things that they want to do. Well, we need to know that
You want to find that out once
early,
everything's hooked up.
because we don't want to have to change everything after we've already built it, because I've done that and it's doable. It's just not fun at all. Nobody wants to do it.
Yep.
So the earlier that you can have all those conversations and bring all those parties together, I think that's the most important thing. Because again, so many of these groups and so many of these, technical and non-technical, or however you want to phrase it, everybody has to be able to work together on this system. So the earlier you can get everybody in the room and discussing things, right? Because you may find that the production people and the marketing people thought they were on the same page, but they're not. They had different ideas about what they wanted to do. I mean, something as simple as a layout on a display sometimes goes over 20 revisions because, everybody's fighting for their little area of space, because as soon as a space is established, that's theirs. Like if marketing or sponsorship gets a spot, or the game production gets a spot, like nobody's changing that later, right? So it's just this real.
Their claim.
It's exactly, you're staking your claim early. So again, having those conversations early, getting everybody in the room to get through those conversations, so that if we've got creative services on the project, our creative services team needs to know, well, what's your layout? How are we? What size are we making things for you?
Yes.
If they're waiting until the last minute, generally speaking, if you're getting an install in the fall, you're not the only place that's getting an install in the fall, right? Everybody's getting an install in the fall at the same time, spring sport, fall sport, whatever it may be. So the longer things wait to happen, like the more pressure, the more rush, the more crunched everybody gets. So it's like, just let's try as best as we can to have as many conversations early, get everybody at the table early, and let's hammer these things out. We don't have to be perfect, but we really got to get a good understanding of what we all want to do and how we can get started, so that we can do our best to build everything out 95% correctly and make small tweaks versus we didn't know and then have to do everything in the last hour.
So when you say early, I'm envisioning in my head a timeline that's got to be more than a month or two early, or even more. Not we're 3 weeks out. We can talk now, right?
You're too late. Exactly. It's sometimes you're stuck with whatever project schedule, whatever. If it's a bid and you're just under the schedule of the bid, that's what you get to work with. But if you know ahead of time that you've got some runway on a project that we've sold this fall, but we're not going to install it until next summer to be ready for the following fall. If you're like a football site,
okay,
perfect. Well, let's get through this football season. And then right when the spring rolls, NCAA, that with NCAA guy, I don't know how NCAA producers do it. There's sports
all the
24
time.
hours a day, 7 days a
nonstop.
week, 52 weeks a year. So whenever
There's
you
graduation,
find,
but then they still have I think the softball
exactly,
conference
it's like
tournaments are going on
spring
now.
ball
It's
now. It's like or fall ball for softball and baseball. It's like, does it ever stop? It never stops. So so let's say whenever you find the time, like to dedicate a little bit to talk about what's going to happen in the fall, let's do that, because again, the sooner we can do that, and really the marketing people like that, because they need to get their specs to their corporate sponsors to make content and all that good stuff. So it's really just as early as you can start having the conversation. Like once we know this is going to be the size of the display, let's start talking. Because the longer we wait, I mean, even for me, I've got many projects that are happening every year, and I don't want to have to say no, I can't help right now. But the longer we wait, the tougher it gets, and that goes for any app engineer. The longer you wait, the harder it is to get the help that you need. So just focus on trying to have the conversation early as possible.
Yeah, it makes me think when we were out this last year at Gillette Stadium for the Patriots, it was kind of one of those things too, and we've heard similar stories of if it's a renovation or a new build, the control room people, the producers, everyone, their stuff usually gets installed the last, right? If there's a new display, right? Going at the same time. So it's one of those, all right, they got power to the board, that's great. All right, now we have our toys, now we can play. But before that, they're trying to line up conceptuals, because that's what they could do to stay busy during that time, right? When there's nothing to actually hook up yet.
Absolutely.
And it was showing people that. And I remember, I think it was, I keep saying Abby. Abby keeps coming up in every conversation.
Abby or Jen.
Yeah, Abby or Jen. But they're doing renderings to show people, right? But again, the Patriots is a gigantic board. But they were showing them, and they're like, yeah, I don't know, like that looks kind of small. I'm like, no, trust me, it won't be. And then so when they finally got the content made, then it was like, all right, see, remember we thought this is too small? Well, that little part is 4 feet tall, and it's the clock now, right? So it's one of those, they have to trust them that they know that this layout is going to work, and it's going to look better when it's on the display when it's all done.
Absolutely. Yeah, those, and like I said, those are the kind of things where it's good that producers and folks are focusing on that stuff early, because again, you have to. Those conversations are eventually going to happen, and it is tough, to be fair, when you don't have a display up that you can put up content to actually look at it. Right, that is a challenging part, but you have to at least be close. You know what I mean? You have to be trying anyway to be ready for that moment when things fire up, because like you said, it's typically going to be the last thing, and you're not going to have a ton of time.
And then that being the last thing means you're just way closer to that first event.
Exactly. So you're just scrambling at that point. So yeah, the more of that legwork you can do, even if it has to be on paper or in a visualization, which I know we do sometimes, like a 3D space or something, right? Something gets you going in the direction that you need to go, because you really can't wait, or you're going to be out of time.
Yeah. And I mean, you're looking at those testing, and they don't get to test it and actually see it on the board. And if it does look too small, have the time to make the change. So start early, have conversations as soon as you can. Anything else about applications engineering and helping make all these displays work that you think someone should know from listening to this podcast?
I think about when I would produce for the Rangers, and I tend to, I don't know, I don't think I put my foot in my mouth very often. Well, I kind of do, but I try to have fun with these conversations, because it's a serious business. Everybody, like, if you're an NFL team, you got 8 games.
It's high stakes.
You can't, there's a lot of pressure to get things right. And sometimes it's very easy to get overly stressed on these things and these moments, and let the pressure, you just let the pressure get to you. But I always felt when I walked into the control room, whether it was FC Dallas or the Rangers, if I was not in a good mood, that would translate. How I feel, how I approach that show when I sit down in the producer's chair, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to call the show like I'm in a bad mood, right? And it's a little thing, but I try to remember that at the end of the day, most of the time, if the team wins,
that it cures all.
It's fine, right? We're okay. Or even if the team doesn't win, it's probably, even if you're working and a team is struggling, or you have a bad team that you might be faced with a second half of a season where you're not going to be good. I think that's even more important to go in and realize that you got to have fun at the job, because that's when the people in the stands probably need you as a producer more than ever. You're there to help them have a good time, right? If the team's good, it almost kind of takes care of itself. You don't have to work as hard, right? Because it's just the crowd wants to be there, they're in it. But if the team is not, that's when you really got to have your entertainment hat on. And I just think I try to maybe make light is maybe not the right way to put it, but I try to have fun. Oh, sorry, thank you. I try to have fun in these conversations, because that's ultimately what I think. To me, it's. I feel genuine when I'm having a fun, when I get to be myself, and I get to just let people know, like, this is at the end of the day, we're here to have a good time. We're here to help people have a good time, and so let's try to get the technical stuff out of the way. Let's try to hammer out all that stuff so we can get to the fun stuff.
Yes.
Because that's really, that's why people want this job, is not to be stressed about a sponsor rotation, but to be in charge of, we put something together, and when we ran it, 40,000 people went crazy.
Yes.
That's the part that I miss the most about the gig. So I like helping people be able to realize that moment, because it's such a unique niche that we work in. There's only so many professional sports event game presentation producers in the world. And when you get to be that person, like, I did a World Series, and at that point, like I said, it was probably the easiest games I worked all year, because by that time the league comes in and hands you a script and says, do this. And the only thing you have to not mess up is that stand up to cancer bit. Like that's the one thing, the entire World Series, that you can't mess up. You have to hit that. But everything else is like, just do your thing. And the crowd is crazy. You just step back and let them have fun. But when you're doing something on a random Tuesday, and it's just a game, right? And you do something and an entire stadium reacts to that, there's really nothing quite like that. And so I hope that, enabling producers to be able to provide I mean, yes, it's a selfish thing to say that, like, oh man, I did that, but also
Yeah.
to allow all those people in the stands to have that moment and to enjoy a game for whatever reason, right? Because we know that sports, as crazy it may seem to some people, it is. For others, it is like the thing that brings them joy sometimes when everything else is bad, right? It seems crazy to me to think that, but I understand it, and you need to respect that and come in with a good attitude and try to enjoy the job as much as possible, because again, I think that translates when you're putting on a show.
I think that scales all the way down to, we've talked to a lot of high schools over the last year, and we have they're using frameworks to build out some different things, and then talking about how the students, when they see the graphic up on the board during a game, being proud and being like,
that's
I
me.
made that.
I
Or
did
people
that.
are clapping
Yep.
in a touchdown animation. They're like, I did that too. So it's definitely that cool thing. It goes all the way down to just kind of proud and taking ownership or taking pride.
Taking pride in the work that you do.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like you said, start early if you're looking to do something new.
Yes, for sure.
Give yourself
Let's not
that
wait.
time
Have
to
fun.
implement so that you have time on the back end to figure out how to make it work. And then when the event happens, you guys can have fun, have an entertaining show, and everybody will hopefully have a good time. Right?
That's the end goal.
There we go.
Absolutely.
Michael, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today and share all about applications engineering and how you make stuff work.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Mike.